Grizzlies fans, welcome back into the Grizzlies game day update. Today, the Grizzlies will take on the San Antonio Spurs for the fourth and final time this season. Joining me again to talk about this fun game. This is our fourth last game of the season, I do believe. So, joining me, Noah Magaro-George. Are
Yeah.
you ready to end the series or the season series with the Grizzlies tonight?
Yeah, it's been a long season, I think, for both teams. Lots of losses, injuries, disappointments. So yeah, I mean, I'm ready for this final game. I know that there's not going to be a lot of people who are playing. The regulars aren't going to be playing, but still excited to see some basketball for sure.
Yeah, so I mentioned this is the fourth time we play the Spurs this year. The Grizzlies have won all three of those, but if you look at starting the first game, it was kind of a blowout for the Grizzlies. The second game, a little closer. And the last game that happened March 22nd was the most recent. It was 99-97 on the back of Jaren scoring 28 points. Wemby led the way for the Spurs, and we'll get to that. He had 31 and 16, but Jaren is out today. So it's going to, if the Grizzlies win this one, it's going to have to be on the back of someone else. So before we begin, I'm going to start with our injury report. And the last couple injury reports, Noah, I have got my paper and I've read all the names. I'm going to make it easier for everyone today. It's just for time's sake. The Grizzlies have 12 players that are injured, 12 players on the injury report.
Good Lord.
10 of those guys are out. Everyone that you are assuming is out, who's been out, is still out. Doubtful, though, is Jake LaRavia and Lamar Stevens. The two guys that are on full NBA contracts, two of them for the Grizzlies, Gigi Jackson and Brandon Clark, are both in. Then you've got your three two-way guys and then a whole bunch of 10-day guys. We just signed a brand new 10-day today in Jack White. He was signed along with Xavier Simpson's second 10-day. So a lot of new faces for this team. However, we're also playing a Spurs team that, like you mentioned, had a ton of injuries as well.
Yeah, not quite as many as the Grizzlies, but they've got some guys out. Keldon Johnson re-aggravated a foot injury, sprained his ankle in the last game. So he's not playing. Jeremy Sohan had season-ending arthroscopic ankle surgery for some ankle impingement he had. So he is done for the season. Devin Vassell was having some trouble with the knee that was bothering him last year. So he is done for the season. They are sitting him for the season. And they also, I believe, are not going to have Cedi Osman. Not that Cedi Osman's like a major player, but he's certainly a guy who plays every single game. He's a role player. He's a vet. So they won't have those four guys. And everybody else should be in, but, everybody else isn't too great, which is, why the Spurs, they have 19 wins this season. So that's who's out for the Spurs. They have more bodies than the Grizzlies, but a lot of their key guys are done.
Yes, but one of their key guys is someone that I think a lot of people, even in Memphis, are going to be coming to the game to watch, and that is Victor Wembanyama. So I want to talk about him. I had mentioned that the most recent game against the Spurs, he had 31 and 16. The most recent game, the Spurs are coming off an overtime loss to the Sixers, and that was the night after the Grizzlies had played the Sixers, so still fresh off the Grizzlies. Took him to overtime, and it took Tyrese Maxey 52 points to win that one over the Spurs when we had 33 and 18. He has been spectacular, specifically this calendar year. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, I think the Spurs have kind of slowly upped his usage throughout the season. If you look at the historic numbers, he now has the highest usage percentage in NBA history by a rookie. So
Ooh.
a lot of stuff is running through him. He's getting a ton of touches. He's getting a ton of on-ball reps. You're going to see him running a lot of inverted pick and rolls. You're going to see him taking the ball up the floor sometimes. So they've definitely put more responsibility on his shoulders. And I think he's responded really well, especially considering that guys like Sohan, Keldon, Devin Vassell have been out probably the last week or so. So just seeing him kind of mature from a guy who didn't always look great or consistent at the beginning of the season to someone who has been pretty much, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it feels like 25, 12, 5 assists or so. And one of the things that I had talked about, I shared on Twitter the other day, was he became the second player ever in NBA history who had 60 assists and 40 blocks in a 10-game span. The only other person to ever do that in NBA history, David Robinson. So he has been fantastic, really, really good for the Spurs. And I really, honestly, I can't say enough for him, because he's even said, I want to play every single game. It's my obligation. I'm not sitting out. And he's just so mature. He just has done so much with so little. So I'm proud of what he's been able to do, what the Spurs have been able to do, even though, not very many wins this season.
And this is going to be his first game after releasing his new logo. Did you get to see that?
Yeah, I did. I think it looks really good. What did you think?
I love it. Like, I love it. I will rock a little alien Wemby logo anytime. I love that.
Absolutely.
Okay. A couple questions for you. The Grizzlies, in those 3 games that they have played already against the Spurs this season, they held the Spurs to 38% field goal shooting, 42 and 43. It has slowly improved throughout the season. However, still 43, not spectacular. How did the Grizzlies, a hungry Grizzlies team, you have to imagine that this roster, although it is not what it is full strength, it is a bunch of guys who are hungry, who are proving themselves, who are using this as an opportunity, a tryout for their career, in a sense. How do they keep the Spurs team to a low 40% on the field goal?
Well, as we said, I mean, the Spurs are not very good, so it shouldn't be that hard. But I think it all starts with Wembanyama. And I think if the Grizzlies, they've been doing their scouting. I'm sure they have a scouting department. I'm sure they've been doing their homework. But if they've been watching the matchups where Wembanyama has kind of struggled, it hasn't really been against super tall guys or super long guys. It's been guys who are bigger wings. So we've seen someone who y'all are definitely familiar with, Dylan Brooks, really give him fits. We've seen someone like Nicholas Batum kind of bother him. And if you can get someone who can kind of get under his dribble, Wembanyama is super turnover prone. Like he loves to handle the ball. He loves to string dribble combinations, behind the back, between the legs. But he's not really that great at doing that. So if you can get under his dribble, if you can pressure him, he's definitely somebody who will commit. As you even saw from the last game against the Sixers, 8 turnovers. Like that's a lot. So if they can double him, if they can get somebody who can really pressure him, I think that's really where the Spurs can start breaking down. Because as it stands right now, they don't have a lot of guys who can do much with the ball besides Wembanyama. No Keldon, no Vassell, no Jeremy Sohan. It's not a one-man show, but it's close to it.
If Wemby's Batman, who is tonight's Robin for the Spurs?
That's a great question. So it's kind of been a attack by committee. They've had a lot of different guys score in double digits the last couple of games. But if there's one guy who the Grizzlies also want to keep a wraps on, is not necessarily as a scorer, but as a playmaker, Tre Jones. Tre Jones has been really solid for the Spurs. He's flirted with a triple-double in the last game. He had his 3rd career triple-double a few games before that. I think he's averaging something like 15, 6, and 9 over his last 8 or 9 games. So if they can get a wrap on Tre Jones, I think that's the Robin, so to speak, that they need to slow down.
All right. This game tips off at 7 p.m. tonight. Like I said, is the 4th last game of the season. I'm so sad. The 3rd last home game. So if you're heading into FedEx Forum, stay dry. It is rainy out there. Get here nice and early. A chance to see Wemby play. We're excited. Noah, thank you for today. And thank you for all season. It's been a blast chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.